Most men think silence is passive, a sign of weakness, a gap to be filled. But in dating, silence is not the absence of action, it's the presence of power. When you go quiet, something strange happens. She starts to wonder. She replays the last conversation in her head. Did she say something wrong? Did she lose your interest? You've shifted the frame. Now, instead of you chasing her validation, she's chasing clarity. That's when the dynamic begins to tilt. You're no longer predictable. You've become a puzzle, and humans are addicted to solving puzzles, especially emotional ones. Silence isn't just the lack of words. It's the tension between what's unsaid and what could be. And that tension? It pulls her in deeper than any compliment ever could. You see, when you speak too much, when you explain, defend, or justify, you kill the mystery. You reveal your thoughts, your fears, your need for control, and in doing so, you give away your power. But when you go silent after she pulls back, when you don't react to a delayed text or passive-aggressive comment, it's unsettling in the most seductive way. She's used to men scrambling for her attention. She's used to emotional noise. But you're different. You're still. You're composed. You've trained yourself to find strength in restraint, and that restraint becomes intoxicating. It makes her lean in, reach out, question her assumptions. Because the man who can remain silent when others speak out loud, that man has already won the frame. Most men underestimate how loud silence can be. When you don't explain yourself, she starts to explain you to herself. When you don't chase, she starts to wonder why she's not being chased. That wonder turns into curiosity. That curiosity turns into tension. And that tension? That's where desire lives. Not in your words, not in your efforts, but in the unknown. The pause, the unanswered question. Every second you hold that silence, you're framing yourself as the man who doesn't seek approval. He commands presence. And the truth is, women don't fall for explanations. They fall for emotions. And silence, in the hands of a grounded man, is emotional warfare. If you're feeling this energy, hit subscribe and tap the bell. The next shift starts with you. When you stay silent after she pulls away, you shift the gravity of the situation. She expected a reaction, a plea, an argument. But what she got was stillness. And that stillness echoes louder than any words could. In that space, her mind scrambles to fill the silence. Did you stop caring? Are you seeing someone else? Were you never truly invested? The silence becomes a mirror, forcing her to confront her own behavior. And in doing so, it reframes you, not as the man who was left, but the man who walked away without needing closure. That's the kind of man who lingers in her mind long after the messages stop. Silence doesn't mean apathy. It means mastery. Mastery over your emotions, over your need to control the narrative, over your desire to fix things. Most men can't handle ambiguity. They rush to fill the void with explanations, apologies, or accusations. But a man who can sit with the silence, who doesn't let discomfort dictate his actions, radiates power. She starts to see you differently, not as someone who's chasing her, but as someone she has to reach. In that stillness, you become rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. When you pull back in silence, she's left to wrestle with her own thoughts, and the mind hates unfinished stories. She starts to wonder, did I go too far? Did I lose him? This uncertainty, this internal tension, creates a deeper emotional reaction than any words ever could. Your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did, not because you're punishing her, but because you're prioritizing peace over drama, dignity over reaction. That kind of quiet power is intoxicating. She won't admit it, but she'll feel it. Most men try to win her back with a text, a call, a long paragraph explaining themselves. But the man who understands the power of silence knows better. He doesn't need to explain what should already be obvious. His lack of response isn't because he's afraid. It's because he's centered. Because he knows, if she can't feel the absence of his energy, she never truly valued it. Silence becomes the mirror, and what she sees in that mirror, her own behavior, her own fear of loss, can be far more powerful than any confrontation. She starts to question herself, not because you said something clever, but because you didn't say anything at all. That space you leave, that pause, that nothingness, it forces her to sit with her own emotions, to feel the tension, the uncertainty, the curiosity. And here's the secret. People chase what they can't predict. When you become a man of few words, your presence becomes heavier, more powerful. She doesn't know where she stands, and that drives her deeper into your orbit. Most men break the spell too soon. They feel the urge to text, to explain, to check if she still cares. But a Stoic man doesn't chase clarity. He becomes the clarity. His silence is not a question, it's a statement. And in that statement, she finds her own confusion. She starts to doubt her choices, her assumptions, her power. And that's when you flip the dynamic completely. She begins chasing a version of you she never fully understood, not because you played a game, but because you chose stillness over noise. Every message you don't send creates space, and in that space, her imagination does the work for you. She begins to wonder, was I too much? Did I push him away? Is he over me? And suddenly, you occupy her mental real estate, not because you forced yourself in, but because your absence became louder than any words. You're no longer just a man. You become a question, and the human mind is wired to seek answers. But here's the real mastery. Your silence isn't about punishing her. It's about preserving you. It's the refusal to beg, explain, or chase. It's the quiet belief that if someone can't value your presence, they don't deserve your words. That kind of silence, it shifts the entire dynamic. She starts to feel what you once felt, the uncertainty, the longing, the imbalance. Except now, you're not the one scrambling for connection. She is. Silence also filters. It reveals who's genuinely connected to you and who's only interested in the energy you give. When you stop talking, stop reaching, stop entertaining, who shows up? Who notices? Who fades away? Most men never find out, because they're too afraid to fall quiet long enough to see. But when you do, you realize how much noise you were tolerating. You see who was only there for the performance, not the presence. She can't test what she can't read. That's why silence drives her curiosity wild. A man who doesn't overshare, doesn't over-explain, doesn't react, forces her to guess, to observe, to lean in. She starts analyzing your every glance, every breath, trying to decode your mystery. And in that guessing, she invests emotionally. Her mind fills the silence with meaning. Her imagination becomes your ally. That's how silent men hold powerful influence, without lifting a finger. Silence isn't coldness. It's presence without performance. When you walk into a room and speak only when needed, when your words are precise and deliberate, you become a figure of weight. She senses your self-control. She knows you're not trying to impress. And that very restraint, that inner quiet, speaks louder than any clever pickup line. You're not performing. You're living on your own terms. That's the kind of presence that lingers in her mind long after you've left. And in the end, silence is the final test. Not for her, but for you. Can you stay still when everything in you wants to reach out? Can you hold your center when uncertainty whispers doubt? The man who can sit in silence without losing himself, that man becomes unforgettable. Because silence, when owned fully, doesn't just create attraction, it creates gravity. And gravity doesn't chase, it pulls, effortlessly.